Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar where we will be discussing our outlook in terms of the equity market and where we see that heading in 2025. Thank you very much once again for joining. So we will run through our report, which was published earlier this week with regard to our equity strategy for 2025 and our reasons as to why we believe that equities will be quite attractive this year. But if you do have any questions, please post them on the Q&A option and we will take it up at the end of the presentation. So to start off with, there are a few key reasons that we are focusing on as to why we believe that equities will really be attractive this year. So the key one, and what we've seen particularly becoming a market mover in the last couple of weeks, is really post the rate cut, which was enacted by the central bank, which is a 25 basis points reduction. While that reduction is quite minimal, it was just the fact that it was not necessarily expected by the market, and we've seen markets actually move up by about 1,000 basis points since this rate cut, and actually about just about 3,000 basis points, 3,000 index points since the bottom that it hit in April. So lower rates is one key driver. And we're also seeing the fact that corporate earnings that have been published with the earnings season, which just ended, has been very strong. We've seen about a 52% overall year-on-year increase in earnings on an overall basis. And this is very strong and much more fundamentally driven this time around, with revenue increases really contributing in terms of the overall bottom line increases that companies have posted as well. And the third point is really the fact that there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of questions around the global risk factor and whether that can really impede the growth that we will be expecting in terms of the equity markets in general. But our view is that Sri Lanka is quite resilient to these global and external volatilities, and we'll talk through the reasons why we believe so as well. So to go through each of these points, so as you can see, the yield curve has seen a very sharp fall since the rate cut that took place on the 22nd of May. We've seen overall across the board, we've seen about 80 basis points to 100 basis points reduction in the yield curve. And this, as I mentioned, was mostly because of the fact that this rate cut was not anticipated by the market. And we believe that the central bank has taken this action after seeing the fact that inflation is much lower than they had anticipated, and they continued to reduce their inflation forecast going forward as well. And as they aim to really hit the 5% inflation target that has been laid out in terms of the inflation targeting framework by the central bank. We're also seeing that core inflation has been quite sluggish, indicative of relatively lower demand-driven inflation, or rather that the fact that administrative price reductions are the primary driver of inflation being quite low at this point, and you're not seeing that uptick happening as fast as I think they would be expecting it to happen. So as a result of that, they've also taken this action in terms of cutting rates at this monetary policy meeting. So what we see is that it's no secret. We've seen this cycle play out time and time again. As interest rates fall, fixed income investments become a lot less attractive. And as a result, money flows towards equities, which tends to perform better. And as you can see in this chart that we've laid out here, and we've shown this chart previously in many times as well, where you see that in easing interest rate cycles where interest rates are falling, and we've represented it here in the blue line by the one-year treasury bill, what you see is that the ASPI or the equity returns tend to overperform, right? And they can tend to overperform quite significantly as well. So if you look at, for example, and this is one of the key cycles which we remember, is really between the mid-2019 to early 20, just prior to the crisis, where we saw interest rates reducing very sharply, where there were several monetary policy rate cuts as well. And we saw equities seeing a very sharp increase in returns on the market being very, very strong. And this we have just taken the ASPI return, but if you take the total return index, is likely to be higher than this. And already we're seeing that with the interest rate reduction that has been taking place, equity markets have been performing a lot better, but it has been a bit volatile and particularly driven by the fact that we've seen a bit more risk-centered more around sentiment. So for example, with the expectation of the elections that we saw the last year, we've seen a lot more risk being factored into the market, which was taken off as soon as the elections concluded. Then we've also seen more recently with Trump announcing the tariff hikes that as well impacted the equity market, and we saw a little bit of a downturn there as well. So it's been a little bit volatile, but right now what we're expecting is that with rates continuing to fall and fixed income investments becoming very, very unattractive for an investor who will at this point really look at their money, look at their portfolio and go, where am I going to get my best returns? Because parking it in a fixed deposit is not going to give me as much return after tax basis particularly. So what are the other investment options that I can look at, right? So for example, if you look at fixed deposit rates adjusted for taxes, and as you know, now withholding taxes have been increased to 10%. So that is automatically getting cut off as well. But if you take the, in terms of the tax brackets, say, assuming someone is getting taxed at about 36% on their interest income right now based on the personal income tax rates as well. What's interesting to see is that the after-tax return then becomes about only about 5.6%, and this is actually less than what they were earning at around 2021 as well, right? So over the last several years, this is the lowest after-tax return that someone would be getting into their hand by parking money in a fixed deposit. And what's interesting also is that we've noticed that banks have also cut, a few banks at least have cut their deposit rates post the policy rate cut that took place as well, right? So banks are under pressure to maintain their margins, and as a result of that, they will continue to reduce their deposit rates, and as a result of that, the earning that someone would get by parking their money in this instrument, and it is one of the largest investment groups in the country, is going to be a lot less attractive. So we will see a lot more people looking at alternative asset classes similar to what they did in 2020 and 2021, which is when we saw the very strong bull run that took place in the equity market. So this time around as well, this is a possibility where we see a lot more people looking at equities a little bit more deeply to understand what kind of returns that they could get from it. And also quite interesting to note is also that deposit growth has been quite slow, and naturally so, because the returns that you're getting are much lower right now compared to, for example, the 20% plus returns that you were getting in the last several years or last 2-3 years, right? So it is actually growing right now at a much slower pace than it has over the last 10 years as well. And this is again indicative of the fact that people are looking at alternative instruments instead of just parking their money in the deposit base at banks. So in terms of what will happen to interest rates, as I've said, we think interest rates will kind of continue to keep falling to some extent, maybe not by a lot, but there is still room for interest rates to remain lower, or the indications of interest rates going forward to remain more towards the downside, right? This is also supported by the fact that we're seeing very high levels of liquidity in the market, right? So even for this year as well, with net foreign inflows that we expect to come in and a current account surplus that we're projecting of about 1.6 billion, we think that this will support market liquidity to remain positive, and as a result, you'll see a further easing of interest rates as well. So what's interesting here is also just the fact that the central bank earlier on this year was actually expecting a current account deficit. They had mentioned that they were projecting a marginal current account deficit in one of their early documents this year. But as of this latest monetary policy meeting, they're now talking about a 0.9% of GDP current account surplus, right? Approximately that's about a 1 billion surplus that they would be expecting there, right? So this is quite in line with our expectations as well. And as a result of that, we will see market liquidity supporting interest rates to come off. And as a result, this supporting the ASPI or the equity returns to be much stronger as well. So in terms of, apart from the current account surplus, because we know that the overall net FX inflows does not end there, it matters how much comes into the financial accounts as well. Some of the forecasts we're looking at include 1 to 2 IMF tranches that will come in this year. So we're expecting one to come in with the next board approval, which is expected to come at the end of June, which is about another $320 to $330 million. And post the next review, which is expected to be around September, assuming it takes place on the same timeline, we should be expecting the next tranche to come in this year as well. But if it is delayed, then we would see it early next year, right? In addition to that, we can expect some funding to start coming in from the ADB and World Bank, given the communications that they've laid out on it. And we've forecasted here about $500 million in terms of inflows We're also hearing a lot more reports about FDI inflows being quite strong within the first quarter of this year. So all of these support the overall balance of payments, and as a result of that, enabling market liquidity to be positive. So in addition to lower rates, which is one of the key drivers of the equity markets for this year, what we're seeing right now is a very fundamentally driven recovery in terms of earnings, right? So over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of volatility in earnings, partially driven by price increases that companies had to enact because of the high inflation and the depreciation of the currency. And that increased some of their earnings despite volumes falling. On the other side of the cycle, when things started improving in the economy, what we saw was the high finance costs that had been recorded in the previous years were now coming off. And on a year-on-year basis, the reduction in that finance cost was boosting bottom line growth. This year, we're starting to see that all of these factors have now muted off. And now you're seeing a much more fundamentally revenue volume driven growth that's starting to come in and being reported by companies in terms of their overall earnings. And as a result of this, based on our expectations for earnings to grow by about 20 to 25% by the end of this year, and assuming that we are able to reprice back to about just below 11 times price to earnings by the end of this year, we'll be looking at a market pricing between 19,500 to 21,000. So we do believe that the market could actually breach the 20,000 threshold that we could see in terms of the overall index. And I think at this kind of pace, we've seen an increase in terms of overall turnover in the market as well, and the positive momentum going into it. I think we could see the market definitely breaching these kind of levels. Speaking a little bit more in terms of the overall corporate earnings. So as I mentioned, corporate earnings in the first quarter of this year has grown by about 52% on a year-on-year basis, right? So typically third quarter and fourth quarter tend to be the third quarter financial year and fourth quarter financial year tend to be slightly better quarters in terms of seasonality, right? We see a lot more tourism inflows, consumer demand is a lot higher. But even with all of that, we've seen that this quarter has quite outperformed quite a bit. So a couple of the reasons that we've broken down this first quarter's corporate earnings, you see about 25% of that coming from the banks increasing their earnings, right? And this is quite interesting because what you've seen is that banks' net interest margins have been falling, and rightly so because interest rates have been coming off. But what you're seeing is that a lot of the banks are starting to take reversals in terms of the impairment losses that they had provided for previously. And this is boosting earnings as well. Some of the banks, of course, have been able to maintain to some extent some of their NIM reductions, but not all of them. But the largest boost we're seeing in terms of the overall sector is really the fact that a lot of them are recording these reversals in terms of the overall impairments, which has helped their earnings in the last quarter. So this might taper off some of the banks. For example, Sampath Bank has already reversed about more than 14 billion in terms of their loan loss impairments. So they might not necessarily see as much, but there are certain other banks that have not yet started that cycle. And as repayment cycles start to improve, as the economy gets better and borrowers start paying back their loans as well, we'll see more banks starting to record these impairment reversals, although they will continue to remain prudent in terms of the overall loan growth. So this has helped corporate earnings in the first quarter as well. In terms of food, beverage, and tobacco, as I mentioned, we've seen a lot more volume growth. We've seen, for example, companies like CCS, Hemas recording very strong earnings on this front and as a result of volume increases, right? So again, financial services, we're seeing company leasing, for example, finance companies are seeing their names remaining relatively steady, but with increasing leasing activity that we're going to see in the market, that these companies would also tend to record much better profitability and possibly increases in terms of the net interest income, although the NIMs might not necessarily grow in line with that. So even in terms of capital goods, materials, consumer services, all of these segments, you're seeing a lot more positivity coming in. Even in terms of materials, something interesting to note is that our exchange rate view is that that the currency will be between 305 to 310. And if you look at that, that is not a major depreciation this year compared to what companies have gone through before, right? So you're not expecting too much input cost pressure. And that is keeping material prices a lot more stable, helping consumers as a result to plan a lot better in terms of their investment decisions. So you're seeing areas like construction and so on starting to perform a lot better. And we'll talk a little bit more of that in terms of some of our top picks that we will be recommending as well. If you're looking at economic indicators, right? So if we're talking about companies recording much more positive corporate earnings growth, and you look at indicators beyond just GDP growth and so on, you look at PMI, we're looking at actual high frequency indicators that we're tracking right now. We're seeing credit card activity increasing. A lot of the banks also mentioned that the net fee and commission incomes have been much stronger because credit activity has been much stronger. Cargo activity has been much higher in terms of the number of cargo that has been handled. And of course, motor vehicle registrations are hitting close to a 20,000 level end of April. And of course, as it continues to increase in March, May, and so on, we'll see these numbers improving. Of course, there is a pent-up demand element to it right now. So it remains to be seen what level it really stabilizes at. But what you're seeing is that there is purchasing power in the economy that is helping to drive this growth, right? So even in terms of the overall import volume index is quite positive. Tourism arrivals continue to be very strong. And just another indication of sectors doing a lot better is, for example, in terms of clinker imports, which is a key raw material for cement and construction. What we're seeing is that the average levels that it's standing at right now on a 3-month rolling basis actually is around the levels that we saw at around 2021 when interest rates were this low as well. So we're seeing the start of this cycle really starting to come in, and these are very positive indicators for both credit growth as well as overall economic activity and volume growth across the economy that will really drive corporate earnings growth in a much more broad-based manner across the sectors. And finally, in terms of the risks, right? A lot of questions do come up saying, what is the biggest risk that you see this year? And it has always been the global risk. But what we're seeing is that Sri Lanka will actually be more resilient in the face of these global risks. Yes, I think the tariffs that were kind of mentioned in April were much higher than we expected, and it was more targeted than we anticipated. What we're seeing is that the effects of these have also worn off for the most part, right? And most often what we see is that when there is a global downturn or a slowdown in terms of overall global growth, while it may not directly affect us, because we are a very import dependent economy, what we see is that it actually more positively benefits our balance of payments and our external accounts than the negative side of it, right? So for example, even during the dot-com crisis of 2001, the global financial crisis, COVID as well, what we saw is that the trade deficits actually narrowed during these periods. And much of it is driven by the fact that commodity prices tend to fall in line with the global reduction in terms of demand. And what happens is, because our oil bill is a significant portion of our import, of our overall import bill, whereas our exports tend to be relatively stable between the 11 to 13 billion kind of range on an overall basis. The saving that we actually get from lower oil import bill tends to benefit us in terms of our trade deficit as well. And this time around, what you're looking at is, if you saw the current account surplus that we've recorded in the first 4 months of the year, it's been a surplus of about 1 billion. And again, that's a 40% growth from where it was last year. So this time as well, what we're anticipating is that it will actually be a net benefit to us. And one thing to keep in mind is that there's going to be a lot of talk about this. There's going to be a lot of new developments that keep coming up on the global front with the changes in overall trade policy and so on. But one thing to keep in mind is that Sri Lanka will more likely be a net beneficiary of this. And it is important to keep that in mind when we factor in what the long-term consequences of these changes in global news might be going forward. And this, of course, means that our view on the rupee is much stronger. I think previously we anticipated the possibility of it being above 310, but right now we are expecting the currency to end the year between 305 to 310. As I mentioned, we're seeing a very strong current account surplus, and we expect this to continue. With trade deficit, we're expecting it to be contained at about 7.3 billion. We've seen tourism performing very well, and remittances, in fact, has been a very positive surprise. We've seen double-digit year-on-year growth in the first 4 months of the year, even taking out some of the seasonality factors. So we're expecting that also to kind of more stabilize around the $600 million a month range, which will really support our overall current account balance. And as a result of that, as I mentioned, we're expecting a current account surplus of about 1.6 billion, which is slightly above what the central bank is projecting, which is about a 0.9% of GDP for this year. And as I said, lower commodity prices are quite beneficial to us. Despite there being an increase in terms of vehicle imports, which has already been accounted for, we expect to see about 800 to 900 million dollars in terms of imports. Possibly that is just below the target of about 1 billion that the government is anticipating. In addition to this together with the saving on the oil bill will be positive. And another thing to keep in mind is also that relative basis, because we trade mostly in US dollars, when there's a weakening of the US dollar because of these trade volatilities that are taking place, this will tend to benefit us in terms of cross currency basis. So we have depreciated even the last couple of months against a lot of the other major currencies, right? Even in terms of the dollar to the euro, from the pound to the euro to the Australian dollar and so on. But we have been not depreciating as much to that level against the US dollar. And because we're seeing the US dollar index, which has hit about a 3-year low just in the last week or so, this will benefit us in terms of a cross currency basis and help us to look a bit stronger in terms of the overall USD to LKR position. So this brings us to our key stock picks, and here I will just talk through our top picks, right, for this kind of market. It doesn't cover all of our recommendations, but definitely what are the standouts in terms of the picks that we have right now. We also have a few trading ideas, which is where we see, for example, where the market has moved, and we take this point from the start of the bull run, which we saw post the presidential election. The market has actually moved up by about 60%. Large cap counters, where we're counting counters over 10 billion market cap, have moved up by 63%. But mid cap and small cap counters have not necessarily gone up as much. So this provides a little bit of space in terms of a repricing of some of their stock prices, just based on kind of a PR basis and liquidity basis, and not necessarily based off anything fundamentally core to their business operations, but just the fact that the market is seeing a re-rating, and some of these counters have not necessarily re-rated despite having some amount of reasonable amount of liquidity in the market as well. So what you would want to focus on with this is really the counters which are on the right side of the screen, where the price movements have been either negative or only about 6% upside from September 2024, which is not as much compared to the 60% that the market has seen, but where their liquidity positions are relatively reasonable, and you can take a little bit more action on them as well. So this is purely a trading perspective in terms of some of the buy recommendations that we would have on this as well. There's also just a general question in terms of what is the macroeconomic outlook? Is it stable? And is Sri Lanka recovering as expected, or is there any risk? So the macroeconomic outlook is quite positive. As I said, interest rates are starting to reduce, and that is an indication of the macroeconomic outlook improving, right? What we are seeing is that inflation is relatively lower. Yes, demand-driven inflation does not seem to be picking up as much, but what we're seeing is credit growth is relatively strong. In the first quarter of this year, most of the banks did see very strong credit growth, just as they have in the last couple of quarters. This quarter, they did lend a little bit more offshore, but even without that, we're seeing domestic credit being reasonable. and that is a positive indication once again. In terms of our external balances, as I said, the current account is in surplus, and that is a positive for our reserve accumulation, which means that we will be able to hit the targets that the IMF has laid out for us, and be able to service our debt repayments once they come due more in a much larger scale in 2028 or so, when we have to start paying back the macro-linked GDP bonds. In terms of the fiscal side, again, the first quarter numbers indicate that tax revenue collection has been much better than expected. The IRD has, I think, outperformed by about 20% compared to the targets that they had laid out. Again, CapEx spending had been a little bit low, I believe, but to a large extent, the primary account has been in a surplus of about 600 billion. So again, on all the different economic indicators that we look at, the economy is showing an improvement. Interest rates are falling, the exchange rate is a lot more stable, and these are positive factors. And the biggest risk that we have always noticed for this year particularly is the global risk. There are, of course, certain black swans that we will not be able to predict to a very large extent. For example, the way the announcement on tariffs came in April is not something that someone could necessarily predict. But as I mentioned, for the most part, Sri Lanka will tend to benefit if there's a global economic slowdown. Sri Lanka is more likely to benefit, particularly on its external accounts, and will be much more resilient in terms of external volatilities going forward as well. There's a question with our view on the hotels sector, with tourist arrivals picking up and interest rates coming down. So we are positive in terms of the hotel sector as well. I think a lot of the hotels seem to have recovered quite strongly in this quarter. Some of them on a 12-month basis has already started reporting profits. So we are positive on the hotel sector. There will be a few hotels that will need to incur a little bit more cost in terms of refurbishments and so on. And that could dampen profits across some of the sectors, but that is across some of the hotels. But that has to be looked at a little bit more on an individual basis. But on a broad sense, we are quite positive in terms of the hotels sector overall. I will not be able to give you our specific picks on that, as we do not cover it specifically, but we are positive on the sector. In terms of the ranges that we had used for the small and mid caps, there's a question on that. So in terms of the mid cap counters, it was market capital between 5 to 10 billion, and small caps was market capitalization of less than 5 billion. There's a question on our view on the ASPI, whether it will reach the 20,000 benchmark anytime soon. We do think that the ASPI will reach the 20,000 benchmark within this year. It's of course difficult to time it and give an exact timeline in terms of when it will hit that, because a sign of a healthy market is not necessarily that it goes up every day, but there is small corrections that tend to take place as it goes up as well. So I would not be able to comment on the timing of it, but we do expect it to hit it within the next couple of months. There's a question in terms of whether improving construction sector will also see the tile sector improving. So on the tile sector, we are quite bearish. We've done a few market surveys as well, and what we're realizing is that the imported tiles are getting a lot more traction, and the other competitor, which is not locally listed, that tends to be priced a lot lower, is Mac Tiles. And as a result of that, what you're seeing is that because consumers are a lot more price conscious and a lot more price sensitive, they are purchasing mostly the imported tiles, or whatever the cheapest option is, which tends to price out some of the listed players. So that is quite a bit of a concern in terms of the overall sector there, compared to, for example, when they were priced very high and volumes were also decent because they were the only option that was available. Another reason that we're seeing that this is slowing down is also that there are much more lower cost alternatives to tiling that consumers are looking at right now. For example, vinyl flooring, imports of those options are increasing at a rapid pace, right? So people are looking at much more cheaper alternatives for tiling. rather than locally sourcing the tiles themselves. So we are quite negative in terms of the outlook for the listed tile sector players. There's a question on our opinion on the textile and apparel sector. So this has been quite interesting because it has been definitely the most affected sector by the Trump's or by the tariff news that has taken place. From our conversations with the players within this sector, what we understand is that TJL is likely to be quite cushioned from any negative impacts overall. So textile seems to be to some extent more cushioned compared to the apparel sector, which is a lot more impacted by a global demand slowdown. So TGL has the advantage of its local operations as well as operations in India, and now they've expanded into Egypt and they're looking at Indonesia as well. So this allows them the flexibility to kind of move around their orders and shift the sourcing, so that if, for example, US is taxing Sri Lanka much higher, they can move this capacity into India and source and supply to Europe from Sri Lanka. So this has meant that they are able to be a bit more resilient by expecting earnings to be relatively stable for TJL. For MGT, it is a little bit more questionable. We would not be necessarily as positive at this point, although we don't necessarily expect it to be very negatively affected, because what we're seeing is that they are very heavily exposed to Nike, and even Nike's outlook on their demand is quite low. So even if there is a shift in terms of orders, for example, the sourcing that takes place from China to be moved around to the other sourcing locations, the net benefit of that may not be that strong. So they might not necessarily see a very strong, very sharp reduction in their volumes. But what we are seeing is that the overall sector as a whole might not necessarily see a pickup as much as we were expecting before. There's also just a question in terms of, apart from the general positivity, what are some challenges you foresee, for example, with Trump's tariffs, tense situations such as what's taking place in India, Pakistan, the conflict. So as I mentioned before as well, I think the global risk is really the biggest one that we are concerned about for this year. And it really has to be taken. I think it's important to view a lot of these global risks in a very broad sense, where you kind of take into account not just the near-term impacts and the immediate impacts, but also what kind of long-term impact these can have. So, for example, in terms of the India-Pakistan conflict, because they are not necessarily some of our largest trading partners and are not necessarily largest global trading partners, particularly Pakistan, for example, that would not necessarily see a major impact, but Sri Lanka again could possibly benefit, as we've seen reports in the last month or so, where we're seeing ships being redirected away from Pakistan and coming to Colombo's ports, which has positively impacted us and really negated the impacts of the Trump issues, right? So a lot of this work kind of simultaneously, and it's important to kind of look at it in a much broader sense of the situation. So I think there will always be quite a bit of geopolitical issues that will tend to rise up, but it's really important to look at it in context of what can really affect Sri Lanka in terms of its external position, in terms of how much do we trade with some of them, and what are the key commodities that we trade with any of these global partners that we might be involved in any type of conflict or any trade tensions. This is a question, and I think this might be the last question that we'll take, because some of the others are asking about very specific counters that are not under our coverage directly. What does the current account surplus mean in terms of banking and business? So the current account essentially is the trade of goods and services, and it also takes into account other current account inflows, which are, for example, inflows and outflows, which are, for example, the interest payments that we will make on things like the international sovereign bonds, on our inflows or net inflows from remittances, and our net inflows from tourism as well. So what it means in terms of banking, specifically, I think the direct impact really is in terms of some of the net fee and commission income. So, for example, if trade-related activities do see a pickup, or for example, remittances are stronger, what you will see is typically that that component for banks will start to perform a lot better. So, for example, commercial bank, which has one of the highest market shares in terms of the remittances side, will benefit a lot more when remittances inflows increase. In terms of the overall business landscape, which is also another question that has been asked there. A positive current account surplus, and if the financial accounts, for example, principal payments and fund inflows and things like that are also positive, which is what we are expecting, um, we will see a lot less pressure in terms of exchange rate, which means that it's a lot more easy for businesses to predict their cost side of things, to make much clearer plans in terms of their strategy going forward, capex plans, and so on. And then we're not going to see too much price fluctuations, which makes it difficult for consumers to project their consumption patterns as well. So it tends to be a lot more positive for Sri Lanka to run. It is a lot more positive for a country to run a current account surplus, because it means directly there's more stability in terms of the currency. But for Sri Lanka particularly, it also means that we are able to build up more reserves, which is required by both the IMF, but also in terms of being able to service some of the debt payments that will fall due in a much larger scale post 2028, when the macro-linked bonds start becoming payable as well, and our bilateral debt also starts becoming payable after a few years. So we do need to acquire a lot more reserves. So running a high current account surplus means our ability to build up our reserves becomes much easier.